Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It is July finally, so with this month, I am hoping that the second half of 2020 goes a little bit better than the first half. Can I get an amen? Anyway, I am here today to do my monthly spread and I wanted to bring you along with me. I'm doing something a little different this month and I really hope that it inspires you to try out this new technique with your bullet journal, your planner, all of your artistic projects, because you could really use this technique for like so many things. I don't want to preview for you this week because I kind of want to keep it a surprise. So without further ado, let's go make our July monthly spreads. Okay, let's start with the materials that you're going to need for this project. First, you're going to need plastic bags. I'm using little plastic sandwich bags. You're going to need markers and water. I'm using a paintbrush with water, but you could also use a spray bottle. You are going to need watercolor paper, and you're gonna need a tape runner or glue stick so that you can attach your watercolor into your planner or bullet journal. Okay, so I'm starting with my watercolor paper. It is already cut down to size to fit perfectly into my bullet journal, so when we're done with our design, then we can just stick it right in there. It'll fit perfectly. Hard part's already done. So I'm gonna grab my sandwich bag here and I'm gonna start putting my design on there. So with my marker, I'm going to start adding a flag design. I want a patriotic theme for my July monthly spread, so that's why I am going with this American flag design. However, you could use this technique to just get a watercolor type of vibe, and you do not have to go through and draw an actual picture on here. You could just scribble on the colors that you want and they'll all blend together once you transfer it to your watercolor paper. So I'm grabbing my water here and I played around with this technique a lot. I tried different amounts of water, different size droplets of water, just to kind of see what it would do to my design and how it would react. I found that the more water that I used, the more abstract my design would turn out when I would transfer it to my watercolor paper. So since I didn't want to abstract it too much, then I decided to go with a medium amount of water, but I wanted to keep the water droplets very small. So that is just what I came to the conclusion of after I did a whole lot of experimenting. So I definitely recommend that you play around with this to kind of see what look you prefer for whichever project that you're doing. So I flipped over my wet marker design and now I'm pressing it into my watercolor paper. I am using my fingers to kind of push around the water droplets to spread it in different directions. So now I'm gonna peel it off and this is what I'm left with. This awesome watercolor kind of paint splatter effect, which I think looks amazing. So I liked it so much that I decided that I wanted to have that watercolor effect for my headers for my boxes over on the right hand side. So that's what I'm doing right now. I used a red marker to kind of scribble out a little bit, and then I used a blue marker to kind of put a few little dots in there, and now I'm just wetting that design a little bit more. And this one I didn't mind if it spread out too much, so I'm being a little bit more liberal with my water usage on this part. So now you can kind of see how much more this part spread out because of how much water that I used versus the flag, because I didn't use quite as much. So now you can kind of see the different ways that you can use this technique just to kind of get those like really pretty watercolor splatter effects without actually breaking out your entire watercolor kit. You can just use whatever markers you have on hand. I'm using Crayola Supertips, so obviously you don't need to have professional, expensive art supplies in order to make this happen. So we definitely want to let our watercolor dry before we go in to try to add anything else. I think it only took maybe 30 minutes to get completely dry. I was doing something else, so by the time I checked it, it was already completely dry. So it might have taken even less time. So definitely would recommend letting everything dry fully before you go back in, especially because for this part, I'm using Crayola Supertips, which obviously, if you were using them on a wet surface, probably would not work very well. So I went in, lettered out July using my faux calligraphy technique, and now I'm gonna go through and do my headers. I'm using a Premier Prismacolor pen. I believe this was an 05 tip. It was one of the bigger tips. It was either an 03 or an 05. And again, just doing that faux calligraphy where you just trace over the downstrokes to make them a little bit wider so that it looks like you lettered it out with a calligraphy pen, but you didn't. You cheated. And that's okay because it still looks cute. So I love the way that these headers turned out with the watercolor technique. I just think that it looks so freaking cute. I'm so happy that I discovered this technique. I actually discovered it on TikTok. I've been really trying to figure out TikTok. I'm 31 years old, so I am not the typical TikTok demographic, but I've been doing my best to try to get the hang of it. I've made one TikTok video. It was my lemon spread from last week, so check that out. It's Carrie Bowberry Co. on TikTok. You know, and if you've got any pointers, let me know, because I'm new to this whole thing. So I went through and I lined out these boxes for my calendar with a large tip Prismacolor Premier pen. I think it was the 05 tip. It was one of the wider tips. And then I added in the days of the week. I left them pretty subtle because of this right here that I'm doing. So all I'm doing is taking my red Crayola Supertip marker and just making a little dot up in the right hand corner of each box. To create a watercolor effect, I am just dipping the corner of my paintbrush into the water and then just kind of smudging the red marker. So I was just making little inconsistent marks. They weren't perfect circles or anything, just kind of literally scribbling and then going over top of it with that water. So while those dry, before I write the dates in over top of them, I'm just writing in some of the plans that I have for this month. And now they have dried enough that I can take my Posca white paint marker and write in the dates. I like to go over them a second time because if you do it over top of another color, then sometimes it's not as opaque as I would like it. So that's why you see me doing this twice. But I think it just looks so cute. I'm so happy that I decided to do that extra little touch with the dates. So now I'm using my Park Lane tape runner and I am just sticking this watercolor paper straight into my bullet journal. It's already been measured out. I rounded the corners. It matches up perfectly. So I just have to stick it in and oh my gosh, you guys, it looks so cute. I love it so, so much. I really hope that you do too. I hope you found this technique helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye guys.